My name is Piers. I'm a private investigator, though lately the cases I've taken on don't exactly fall within that title's usual scope. This time, the letter came from a woman in a town I'd never heard of, Ashridge, nestled somewhere deep between the valleys of Vermont. No return address. Just a crumpled envelope, hand-delivered to my office with no sign of who left it. They told me it was just the wind, just the old earth settling. But I heard it whisper. We all did. It's not just voices anymore. People have started to disappear. First the dogs, then the children. Please, I beg you, come before more are taken. We are not safe in Ashridge. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in monsters. But I've learned to trust the desperation in a letter. Especially the kind that's been written with shaking hands and closed with a wax seal that's been split in a hurry. I arrived in Ashridge the next morning. The town is small, with just one road in and one gas station that looked like it hadn't had a delivery in a year. The man behind the counter didn't speak when I bought a cup of bitter coffee and asked for directions. He just nodded once, pointed toward the hills, and looked away. Like I'd already made a mistake by coming. I found the woman who wrote the letter, Mabel Hanley, in a crumbling house at the edge of town. She couldn't have been older than 40, but her eyes looked 70. She spoke slowly, and only when prompted, like every word took effort. She told me the story, the real one. Ashridge was built on old ground, land that used to belong to a religious commune back in the 1800s, the Brighter Way. People who believed that salvation came from below, not above. That the light sleeps beneath the black soil. Most of them vanished in 1862 during what the town records still call the collapse. An earthquake, they said, but there's no record of seismic activity in the area. Since then, the town kept to itself, and things were mostly quiet. Until about 3 months ago. First, the ground started humming at night. Not every night, just some. Then the dogs started disappearing. Then came the whispers. Everyone hears something different. A loved one calling, a child laughing, a lullaby in a language you don't quite recognize. The kind of sounds that pull people outside in the dark. People who don't come back. 3 children had gone missing so far. No struggle, no signs of forced entry. Doors left open, windows unlatched. Always around 2:14 a.m. The only other connection? Each family had reported faint ash scattered near the child's bed. Fine gray dust, cold to the touch. Mabel kept a jar of it on her mantle. I asked if I could run some tests on it. She nodded. I pocketed it and told her I'd start digging in town. I visited the sheriff next. Name was Dyer. Thin, pale man with a badge that looked heavier than he could carry. He didn't say much either. Told me there was no evidence of foul play, no bodies, and nothing to pursue. He looked past me while he spoke, eyes always drifting toward the woods outside his window. When I mentioned the commune, the Brighter Way, he tensed up. Old stories, he muttered. Best left that way. That night, I stayed in a motel near the edge of town. 5 rooms, all empty but mine. I checked the locks twice, sat on the bed with a recorder and jotted notes. At 2:14 a.m., I started hearing it. Not a voice. Not exactly. More like breathing. Slow, deep, rhythmic, like the inhale and exhale of a massive creature beneath the floorboards. I got up and opened the curtain. Nothing outside but black trees and mist. The sound kept going for 6 minutes, then it stopped. I looked down at the floor and noticed something. Ash. Just a few grains, by the door. I checked the locks again. Still sealed. At sunrise, I walked the town perimeter. Most buildings were shuttered, but I found one place open, the church. Or what was left of it. Just a hollow shell now, roof caved in, pews rotting in rows. There was no altar, just a hole in the floor, perfectly round, too precise to be natural. I leaned over it. No light inside, no smell, but I heard something, a vibration, like the sound of wind over a bottle's mouth, dull, endless. I dropped a coin down, never heard it hit bottom. Later that day, I visited the town's archive, took some pushing, but they let me see the old commune records. Most were burned, water damaged, but I found pieces. The Brighter Way believed that a divine light was imprisoned beneath the earth, that by listening, truly listening, You could hear it speak. They held vigils every week, gathering in a large underground chamber to wait for the stirring. One phrase was repeated over and over. When it breathes, we remember. The missing children, the ash, the breathing, the hole in the church. It all lined up. What they were worshipping hadn't gone away. It had just gone quiet. And now, it was waking up again. I spent the next morning back in the forest behind the church ruins. There was something unnatural about the way the trees grew here. Too symmetrical. Too quiet. No birdsong. No rustling leaves. Just the soft crunch of old needles under my boots, and the faint smell of burnt stone. Roughly a mile in, I found what I didn't know I was looking for. A foundation. Just 4 moss-covered corners of stone, buried beneath decades of root growth. In the center was a metal trapdoor. I cleared it off and tried to lift it. It didn't budge. There were no hinges. No handle. Just a flat iron surface, cold as ice and etched with a symbol. A circle with a vertical slit down the center. I'd seen it before, in the records from the commune. It marked the entrance to their underground sanctum. A place they called the Listening Vault. I took photographs and made note of the location, then returned to town. At Mabel's request, I visited the families of the other missing children. Each story followed the same pattern. The child had gone to bed as usual. Around 2 a.m., strange sounds started. One family heard a dripping tap that didn't exist. Another described the smell of sulfur and lavender. All of them said the child had vanished without a sound. Doors were locked. No forced entry. Only the ash remained. They all said the same thing too. The sheriff told them not to talk to outsiders. That afternoon, I finally found someone willing to speak in more detail. An old man named Alfred Kessler, who ran the town's barely functioning hardware store. He'd lived through the last incident. He said it happened 40 years ago, long before most people in town were born. It starts small, he told me, eyes clouded with something that wasn't age. Always the animals first, then the youngest, then the ones who listened too closely. I asked him what they were listening to. He lit a cigarette and exhaled slowly. Something old, something that wants to be remembered, something the earth tried to bury, and we keep digging back up. He said the town made a deal last time, closed off the old tunnels, poured concrete, burned the records, buried the Brighter Ways text, but it wasn't enough. You don't kill things like that. You just lull them, until it starts breathing again. I asked him about the ash. He didn't answer, just handed me a small rusted key and nodded toward the church. That trapdoor in the woods? You'll need this. That night I returned. I followed the trail to the trapdoor and knelt beside it. The key slid in without resistance. As it turned, the whole slab shifted. Not up down, like it sank an inch into the earth before groaning open. A black square of void waited below. I pulled a flashlight and descended the ladder. The air changed immediately. Heavy, warm, tasting of metal and rot. The tunnel ran deep, unnaturally deep. The walls were stone, but not carved by hand. They'd been melted, smoothed, as if by intense heat or something worse. After 10 minutes of descent, I reached a chamber, circular, maybe 30 feet wide. The walls were lined with what I first thought were sculptures, hooded figures in long robes, kneeling in prayer. Then I saw the skin, the hands, the texture of mouths stretched permanently open in silent chants. These weren't statues. They were the original members of the commune, mummified by time or something stranger, kneeling in a perfect circle around a black pit in the center of the room. No railing, no cover, just the void, humming gently. The flashlight flickered once, then again. I stepped closer to the pit, and I heard it, breathing, not fast, not loud, but real. Slow, long inhalations, deep as a mine shaft. And underneath, whispers. Not audible words, but vibrations, almost like static. It pressed against my skull. Not painful, just present. I stared down into the pit. Something moved. Just once. A slow ripple, like a twitch in muscle beneath skin. I backed away, turned, and left. I climbed back into the forest and shut the trapdoor behind me. Locked it again. But I didn't feel safer. Back in my motel, I examined the ash sample under a field microscope. Something was moving inside it. Tiny filaments. Not alive in the biological sense, but not inert either. They'd pulse slightly in rhythm with something I couldn't detect, like they were syncing with a frequency not audible to the human ear. I sealed the jar again. That night, I set up a camera near the trapdoor entrance and left an audio recorder running beside my motel bed. At 2:14 a.m., the recorder picked up the breathing again. But this time, it wasn't distant. It was inside the room. The door remained locked. The windows closed. The ash appeared in a line across the carpet, forming a perfect circle around my bed. Whatever it was, it knew I had gone down there. It knew I had seen. I didn't sleep after that. I spent the morning reviewing the footage from the trapdoor camera. At 2:13 a.m., the frame went dark, not static, not black, but like the lens had been swallowed. 37 minutes later, it came back. The door hadn't moved. The woods were still. I contacted the sheriff's office. No answer. I drove to the station. Empty. No receptionist. No deputies. Phones ringing into the void. The cells in the back were open, unoccupied. A cup of coffee still steamed at one desk. The calendar on the wall had every date for the next week crossed out in black marker. The only sound came from a radio left on in the corner. White noise broken only once, by a single whisper. "He's listening now." I left. I needed records. Old ones? The kind they wouldn't digitize or trust online. I broke into the town archive, a squat brick building near the elementary school. In the basement were stacks of boxes. Most were useless, tax ledgers, building permits, birth certificates. But in a locked cabinet at the back, I found a file marked Ashridge event, 1983. Inside were photos. Grainy, black and white. Children missing. The same ash lines around their beds. Forest clearings with dead animals laid out in spiral patterns. One photo showed a handprint pressed into a tree trunk, burned in as though seared by immense heat. But it was too long, too thin. Human-like, but not human. There were transcripts of interviews. A boy named Daniel Carter, age 9. "They told me to come outside," the transcript read. "Who told you? The ones in the woods? People? No. They're not people." He disappeared a week later. Ash in his sheets. No sound. The last page of the file was a note, handwritten. "Do not investigate further. We reached an understanding. No more digging." Signed by the sheriff at the time, Sheriff Thomas Mercer. The same last name as the current one. I left the archive and drove to the church. The trapdoor was open. No sign of forced entry. Just open, as if waiting. I went down again. This time, with gear. A field recorder, thermal cam, 2 flares, and a 9mm. The pistol felt useless, but necessary. The figures were still in the circle, still praying. But the pit was different now. It pulsed, slow, subtle. A heartbeat you felt through the soles of your shoes. I threw a flare in. It dropped for nearly 6 seconds before hitting something soft. Then the whispers grew louder. They weren't inside my ears anymore. They were in the chamber, carving against the stone. A low murmur like wind through wet reeds. I activated the recorder. The words formed slowly. "He who listens will speak. He who speaks will open the gate." The floor shook once. Then the figures began to twitch. Slowly, almost imperceptibly. Hands shifted. Heads turned. Jaws creaked open wider, distorting bone. One of them stood. It wasn't possible. But it happened. I raised the gun. It didn't matter. It stepped toward the pit, stopped at the edge, looked at me, or rather through me, and then dropped silently into the darkness. No scream. No impact. The rest followed, one by one. Some crawling, some stumbling, until the chamber was empty except for me. And the pit, which had grown wider. Something inside it moved. Not up outward, like a pressure pushing against invisible walls. I left. I resealed the trapdoor, but it no longer locked. At the motel, Mabel was gone. Her office light was on, her phone still charged. But there was ash on her desk, just a single streak, leading toward the open door. That night, I made a decision. If I couldn't kill it, I could contain it. I loaded my car with fuel tanks, rags, salt, a canister of quicklime. drove to the forest and waited for dusk. I doused the trapdoor and surrounding earth, lit the first flare and dropped it onto the soaked soil. It caught immediately. The fire burned green at first, then deep red. No smoke, no heat. Just a sound, like wet fabric tearing slowly, over and over. The ground screamed. I mean that literally. The forest floor buckled. The air tasted like blood. Something beneath the surface thrashed, not physical, but present. I didn't wait to see what would emerge. I left Ashridge that night. By dawn, the fire had reached the treetops. Local reports called it a lightning strike. No one questioned further. Back home, I reviewed the final audio. There was a voice in the background. Not human. Not machine. It whispered, "Another will dig. Another will hear. Another will speak." The tape ends there. So I write this down. Document it. Record what I saw, what I did. Because the town may be gone. But the vault is not. And something inside it is still listening.